the one and only Freddie Coleman. And I introed you before. I said, in a world where everybody wants to be a hot take and a shock jock, you are all about substance. You got style too with the glasses and the reggae day yesterday. I'm so appreciative of you joining me, my friend. Thank you so much.
Oh, always appreciate you, Jay, and the kind words as well, my friend. And we family. Family do things for each other, especially when we care about family. So really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you got me in the. As soon as I see you put some, it's so funny. You have such an impact on my musical intake because you play something on the show or you'll post
Hmm.
something on Twitter, and then all of a sudden I'll be like getting in a mode, and then I start going, oh, there's my Damian Marley phase. Like that's I start I start going down the rabbit hole. Like, oh, the Whalers, here we go. So yeah, I
Yep.
love that, and you've always
Thank
done
you.
such a great job of incorporating the music. And I just read the article that my old boss John Mamola wrote about you for the
Mhm.
BSM, talking about inclusion and talking about making sure that we are grading and we're judging people by the merits of what they can bring to the table, but also being cognizant that we need to it needs to be more inclusive. How great was
Yeah.
that to be a part of that article with John?
Well, it was funny because you mentioned that, Jay, because when John had a chance to get in contact with me, I said, okay, this will be very revealing because as somebody who's been in the business as long as I have, you've seen a lot of faces and been a lot of places, no matter whether you worked in sports talk radio or me being a program director in music radio, a music director in music radio at different locations, whether it's in Portland, Maine or in New York City. And the one thing I was really, really glad about being in those places was that people who are in charge of things wanted inclusion. They wanted different perspectives. They didn't just want it to just be one perspective from either one person's side or a people's side, or depending on your social status or your financial status. They believe that the more ideas and the more interaction you could have with everybody involved in any situation, that was going to make any radio station better, whether it was professionally or personally or even spiritually. So I've been really, really blessed that a lot of situations that other people have gone through, I've gone through them, but I've also been on the other side where somebody said, I don't care what he or she looks like. What do they bring to the table that I need to make this work? And if that's going to be the case, then they can have one eye rotating side to side in the middle of their forehead like Cyclops. I don't care. And so I've been really, really fortunate that to have a perspective on both sides of those things, Jay.
I know you're doing such a great job with our guy Harry over there, and it is weird to turn on the radio at night not to hear you and Ian. And I've been on with you guys back talking about boat
Yep.
parades years ago, and I used to call in. Like I know you had that such great chemistry. Not saying you don't have it with Harry, but that overnight, it's a timing right of your life
Yeah.
because everybody else might be like winding it down for their day, and you're turning it up. Like, what is that like? What's that adjustment been like for you?
It's funny you mentioned that, Jay, because I think it's the same kind of principles, whether you're doing 3 to 7 every afternoon or what I did for many, many years, working until 1 o'clock in the morning and sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning. It's all about making sure people get home safely to their destinations. Because you're right, working that at that time of night, whether it was second shift people or people about to go to their third shift jobs, you wanted to make sure they got to their destinations safely. It's the same principle when it comes to afternoon drive because plenty of people are either going to be in their car or on their way to their car to drive home and they turn you on and they tune you in. So those principles haven't changed with me because a lot of people do a lot of in-car listening, whether it's terrestrial radio, whether it's satellite radio, whether it's a smart speaker on their phone. But more often than not, you're going to have people in their vehicles on their way. Either they're winding down their day or maybe their day's about to get started. So that's the one principle, Jay, that really has not changed. If we can get you home safely, because that was our approach when it was Freddie and Fitzsimmons, and that is definitely our approach when it comes to Freddie and Harry. If we get you home and you don't want to get out of your car because you're afraid you're going to miss something, then we know that we got a pretty good thing going on each and every afternoon from 3 to 7.
Freddie, how and again, I am, I grew up in New York, listen to Mike and the Mad Dog. Like I was one of those kids. I didn't know any better. Like I didn't know that not everybody listened to sports talk radio because my dad was a coach, my grandfather was a coach, and on the way to baseball practice or hockey practice or anything that we did, my entire family, there was a good chance that FAN or ESPN was on, right? Like that's just the way
Right.
it goes. But I never got into it saying I wanted to be this guy or want to be this guy. But if there is one person, I'm not just saying this, you're here, I've said it when you're not around. I like that you have a measured approach into what you're saying. And my thing is that and I've had even my dad ask me, like, do you ever feel the need to just say things to just say it or to be that shock jock hot take, let's make sure that they can clip it and put it on their phone. I've always said to myself, I'd rather take a long road to get
Hmm.
to success being who I am rather than taking a shortcut to speak out of my ass and to not be right. Right. Do you have
Yeah.
that same kind of sentiment as well?
I've always been that way because I figured, Jay, I got a big enough mouth anyway that people are going to hear me. So I don't need to go to that level to say, I got to say this way. I got to say it that way to get attention. I've always gotten attention by opening my mouth. I must have driven my classmates crazy when I was a young kid growing up in Brooklyn, New York, because I know my teachers, the one common denominator they would tell my mom and dad was, he talks a lot, but he knows what he's talking about. The kids may not like it, but I appreciate it. So
Mm,
I was able to look at that and say, okay, I don't need to just say something just for effect in our business because it can be very easy to be seduced by that to get attention.
right.
If you have to do that to get attention, then it's not going to work out, especially if that's not your personality. Now, if that's who you are, you should never, ever change that. If you're the kind of person that wants to be bombastic and have that kind of sense about you to put those things out there in your way at that velocity and at that volume, then you know what? Have at it. If you like it, I love it. But there have been plenty of people, Jay, in our business, and we run across a couple of them that felt the need to do something like that. And you come off as not being authentic. You come off as not being genuine. And no one's going to look at me and say that I'm not genuine or that I'm not authentic. You may not agree with what I have to say. As a matter of fact, I'd be completely stunned if you did. But if I have a chance to be heard, I don't feel the need to grab somebody by the throat and say, pay attention. I can do it my own way to lean you in and draw you in. And then all of a sudden we can have a civil discourse.
Yesterday was such a big day, Freddie, NFL free agency, and everybody was losing their mind because Twitter was down. I felt so. I felt like an American. Sometimes when you go overseas, you go to Europe, and you're like, man, the internet is so slow, and you're like, man, is this
Yeah.
really a problem? Yesterday, I
Uh-huh.
felt like the entire country was like that. Like we're freaking out because we don't know where people are going in free agency. What was the big team or the big move that kind of stood out to you the most yesterday, NFL free agency?
Boy, there were so many. I mean, you look around and say, wow. I mean, the Houston Texans apparently don't want anybody to block for CJ Stroud. They got rid of 3 of their 5 offensive linemen. I still think the one thing that really jumped out to me was Sam Darnold signing with the Seattle Seahawks. It could have been very easy for him to go to a better situation with better personnel when it came to the Pittsburgh Steelers or somebody else. But he has an affinity with Mike McDonald. And I think Sam Darnold wanted to have a chance to have his own team. That's not to say he's an ego person, that it needs to be him and everybody else. He's gone through way too much in his NFL career to be that kind of person. But I think having a chance to go to Seattle in that division, playing in the Pacific Northwest, he gets a chance to be closer to home since he's a California kid. I thought those things were very appealing to Sam Darnold. So when I saw that contract, I wasn't surprised by the 3 years over $100 million. That didn't surprise me at all. But I said, wow, why would he go to Seattle? I'm thinking, okay, they moved on from Smith. They moved on from him, and he goes to the Las Vegas Raiders when it comes to Geno Smith. And he's the perfect guy for what they want to do. They're going to run the football effectively if they can keep their running backs healthy. Their offensive line is really not bad. They got a bunch of what I call Eastern Promises bouncers that'll throw you out of the club in that Seattle Seahawks offensive line. And you have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is that close to being an elite wide receiver. And they'll find other people, even though they moved on from Kevin Lockett and DK Metcalf. So when I saw that, I said, there's a purpose to that, even though I was very surprised that he was able to go there and maybe not think about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I always thought that growing up, Giants, Steelers, like Packers, those teams that are they're different than everybody else, right? They travel.
Yes.
I mean, we see it down here in Tampa, like they travel. I look at the Giants and the Steelers and I go, man, you had Eli, you had Ben Roethlisberger, and ever since then, it's just like,
Yeah.
what is going on here under center? Who do you think is going to be the quarterback when it is all said and done? Is Aaron Rodgers one of those guys? Like, who's going to be the Steelers quarterback? Who's going to be the Giants quarterback? Because out of all the questions that have been answered over the last 48 hours, those are 2 of the biggest ones that have yet to be.
I still think Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know there was a report that came out today from Adam Schefter that the Minnesota Vikings could still be in play. I don't think you'd want that if you're Kevin O'Connell when you got J.J. McCarthy, who you believe is going to be ready to play, because he was pretty much ready to play last year, Jay, before he had that injury. And then Sam Darnold went out there and just lit up everybody for 14 wins in a playoff appearance when nobody saw that coming from him in the Minnesota Vikings. So I don't believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to go there. I think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I think the New York Giants are going to wind up taking Russell Wilson because he is the last quarterback standing. Especially Daniel Jones signed that 1 year, $14 million deal to Indianapolis Colts to push Anthony Richardson to be the starting quarterback with that team. And if you're Russell Wilson, the Steelers have told you that they don't want you. If they had their choice, they'd rather take in Justin Fields. When Justin Fields got that offer from the New York Jets to finally have his own football team, he'd have been a fool to not take that contract. So if you believe getting a DK Metcalf at 5 years, $150 million, and you got George Pickens, you got Pat Fryermuth, you're going to re-sign Jalen Warren at running back, you got a decent offensive line, you believe this can bring you closer to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati and Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, you need that kind of quarterback because Russell Wilson showed when the competition stepped up, he couldn't do it last year after he had a great start to the season. Aaron Rodgers was really, really good the final 7 games of the regular season. And it could be very easy to say, well, he didn't have anything to play for. He could have dialed out, but he didn't. Right. So that just makes all the sense in the world to me that you get Russell Wilson as your stopgap. You draft the quarterback in the first round or in the second round, maybe Tyler Shuck, who I think is going to be a terrific prospect from Louisville. You get him in the second round, or Jackson Dart if you want to trade down from Ole Miss. But I think that's going to be the play for the Giants. Bring in Russell Wilson as your stopgap and have Aaron Rodgers on the other side going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And maybe they take a quarterback later on in the draft too.
Freddie, I wanted to get your opinion on the Buccaneers. Dan Orlovsky sent out a tweet, I don't know if it was last night or earlier today, saying that Jason Licht is one of the most underrated GMs in the NFL. And I'm like, well, I don't know if he's underrated. I mean, the guy just keeps he brought Brady here. He drafted Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield. People look at the Roberto Aguayos and the moves that's farther and farther away. I mean, you just look at what he's able to do, drafting Bucky Irving, drafting Jalen McMillan, right? His first draft pick ever was Mike Evans, drafting Chris Godwin, retaining these guys. They retained all 22 starters after the Super Bowl. They retained all 11 starters on the offensive side of the ball. I just wanted to get your opinion from like a national side from afar. Like, what do you think the overall view is of Jason Licht, the Buccaneers, and their prospects of being a competitor in 2025?
I don't think he gets enough credit for not only taking chances on guys, but taking chances on the right guys. Many people wonder why you're bringing in Baker Mayfield. There's no way he's going to be a productive quarterback. Well, we've seen what he's been able to do when he has an organization that trusts in him after he was thrown on the sword by the Cleveland Browns, because everything that went wrong, they blamed him. And Jason Licht said that guy can play for me. And now you look what he's been able to do when he had a chance to be paired with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and having that underrated running game. They've done a really good job, Jason Licht, not only keeping the guys they want, but then going out and get the pieces they're going to need to move up in a loaded NFC now, where you got Minnesota, where you got Green Bay, you got Detroit, you got Philadelphia, you got Washington, you got the Los Angeles Rams. You got some bruisers in the NFC that can play any kind of style, that can get after any kind of way. I love what he's been able to do because he's recruited players for his own division, but you're also able to go somewhere else and win anyway, and you're not going to have a team run away from you. I don't think Jason Licht and his scouting department get enough credit for what they've been able to do in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization.
1,000%. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little college hoops. I don't get to do that much down here unless it's USF. I think this is one of the craziest college hoops years ever with the SEC, with Cooper Flag and everything. So great to see our guy Dickie V back out there. We know he lives here locally. But man, it's just this. I told somebody a little bit before, they're not a big college hoops fan. I said, now's the time. Get in right now. Conference championship play. You see the craziest. Who's the player or who's the team that you're keeping a close eye on through the conference play and also into the NCAA tournament, that'll, whether it's for possibility of winning a championship or just pure entertainment value?
Well, for me, I think the Houston Cougars are a legitimate team. Right. They can play any kind of style now. It used to be that they wanted everything to be a rock fight, Jay, but now they have guys who can score, and they have guys that can play inside and outside. They don't mind getting on the fast break because they know they're going to out-defend you and get after it. So that's a team I look at and say, man, I would not want to draw that team at all at any given time in the NCAA tournament. I think they're going to be really, really good. Auburn, I don't worry about Auburn so much. I know they're going to play well. But when they have those lulls, then I think they get lax on defense, and that could be a problem. They were able to get away with it a couple of times this year and playing in the best conference in the country, where one night you got Missouri, or one night you got Vanderbilt, another night you got Alabama, or you got Kentucky, or you got Florida, or you got Tennessee. Man, that's a murderer's row of teams that can do that. But when you get in the tournament, one and done situation, if you have one of those lulls and you got a hot shooting team on the outside, then the crowd turns against your basketball team. I wonder how they're going to handle that. Cooper Flag, to me, is the best player in the country for Duke, and he's gotten better and better and better each and every game. But the best part about that, Jay, is that he's been able to drag other people with him. They've gotten better, not just defensively, but sharing the basketball. Or as our friend Steve Lavin likes to say, they do a great job of sharing the sugar where the ball just doesn't stay in one spot. That's a team that is long and athletic on the front line that we haven't seen from Duke in recent years. I'll give you a team that if they're on the side of a bracket, and let's say if you're a 5 or a 4 seed, you don't want to see them, that's that Drake basketball team out of the Missouri Valley Conference. They are really good with Bennett Sturts, one of the 4 Division II transfers that came with their coach from Northwest Missouri State, where he's part of a national championship team and got to the Final Four last year. They can shoot the basketball. They run great offense. They run great sets. And they're a team that will make you work on the defensive end, and they make things very tough for you on the offensive end. If you get a Drake that's a 12 or a 13 seed, and you see that, you may start to get the Williams go, oh boy, because they're going to be well coached and they're going to be well prepared for anybody that they're going to play.
We know those 5-12 matchups every single year. Somebody's going down. And my dad's happy about the Johnnies, man. I mean, I remember I was very, very young when Mullen and all the rest of the guys there, and Luke Carnesecca. And then I remember the Artest days with Bootsy Thornton and Felipe Lopez. Like that was, I was like, man. And then and now Rick Pitino's come there and done such a masterful job. I feel like it's a part of basketball, and it makes me harken back to the old Big East days, because I don't know if we'll see that again. Even though the SEC was great this year, and I'm smack dab in the middle of it, even watching old videos of the Big East in the 80s and the 90s, and to see Rick Pitino and St. John's there, it seems like everything is right with college basketball, especially in the Northeast when they're in there.
There's no doubt about that, because we maybe should have expected this, Jay, because year 2 where Rick Pitino has gone, they've always vaulted up. Year 2 at Boston University, they win their conference championship, the North Atlantic, and they get the NCAA tournament. Year 2 at the New York Knicks, they win their division. They get to the second round before they lost to the Chicago Bulls. Year 2 with Kentucky basketball, they win a national championship when he got there. Year 2 with Providence, they go to a Final Four. Year 2 with Iona basketball, they win the conference championship in the MAC. So I guess we should not have been surprised, because it takes a special kind of person to play for a guy like that, because you're going to get the 100 from Rick Pitino. He is not going to mince words. And I know that halftime speech that went viral when he had a chance to have that comeback versus Providence. And believe me, I've talked to players that played for him. They'll tell you that was relatively tame, how he used to be in college basketball. He said, those guys at St. John, they got off really, really light. But he also knows exactly when it comes to preparation. We saw that the days of Louisville, where he was so good at taking away what you wanted to do and make you play left-handed. And when you tried to do the same thing, they're always great with their counters. They're always great with their adjustments. He is perfect for tournament basketball, and he's got what I like to call Noah's Ark. He's got 2 of everything: 2 point guards, 2 shooting guards, 2 centers, and he has guys that make plays, whether it's Kadari Richmond or R.J. Louis. So I think it's going to be Big East Player of the Year. Ubi Ejiofor, I think, could be the most underrated player in the country, where he can play inside and outside. He's so good protecting the rim at 6'9". They have a very deep team that even when they have injuries, guys step in and they play extremely well. That's another team that whether they get a 2 seed, I think it's more than likely they get a 2 seed. I don't think they get a number 1 seed. But I know from a number 1 seed, I'm thinking, I hope they put them on the other side of the bracket. Don't put them with me, because that's a team that'll make you work for 40 minutes.
Last one out of me, Freddie. I know you got to get ready for the show. I got to ask you about Gerrit Cole and the unfortunate news that we saw yesterday. And I know Rays fans that are watching are like, no, unfortunate. I don't see anybody go down to injury, especially Tommy John, because there's no better indicator of like, all right, your season's over. And we've seen that a lot with some Rays pitchers here. But what does that mean for the Yankees and where they rank kind of in the hierarchy in the division? And, I still think there's a lot of pieces there. I know Luis Hill is down as well, but this is going to make the Max Fried acquisition even more important. And Carlos Rodon needs to step up. And now you're looking at good thing they didn't get rid of my fellow Long Islander, Marcus Stroman, either. Fun fact, too, my brother had 4 at-bats in high school. Two off of Marcus Stroman, and he had 2 hits. My brother was end of the bench guy, 2 for 4 against Marcus Stroman. But the Yankees, where are we at with them? Do you think this really – and obviously it hurts not having Gerrit Cole, but where do they go from here, Freddie?
Well, they're used to playing like Gerrit Cole. They wanted getting to the playoffs in the World Series last year when he was out the majority of 2024. This is not foreign territory to the New York Yankees, but these are the kind of situations I think they're going to really miss Juan Soto. When you can have a bat in that lineup that elevates his game and elevates Aaron Judge's game, you as a pitcher can go in there and say, even if I get 3 runs, I know those 2 guys over there are going to get 5 or they're going to get 4. That's where I think his absence is going to be magnified, Jay, because no matter what was going on, you could look at Juan Soto and say everything is going to be okay. Well, now that pressure is increased exponentially on Aaron Judge to try to make sure everything's going to be okay. He's not going to have Giancarlo Stanton at the beginning of the year, but they did a really good job in free agency going to get depth in the pitching staff. So they'll be able to kind of temper that, not having Gerrit Cole and not having Hill until maybe about May or June, whenever he's going to come back. There's still talent on this baseball team that I still think the only team that's better than them right now going into the season are the Cleveland Guardians. They're really, really good. Yeah. They can pitch it, they can pick it, they can hit it, they play tough for 9 innings. They're the kind of team that you don't want to see in a street fight in an alley, because you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm going to get my behind kicked, and if I don't feel like that, I should. That's the kind of team the Guardians are. And then they have the motivation from a team that they believe they were that close but could not get those clutch at bats in the final games of the American League Championship Series against the New York Yankees. But because they have pitching depth and the hitting depth was compromised a little bit not having Juan Soto, I still think they're going to be a team that's going to win their division because they have that kind of talent. And I think right now only the Cleveland Guardians are better than the Yankees going into the season in the American League.
He's Freddie Coleman, 3 to 7, Freddie and Harry, ESPN Radio. Freddie, I'm so grateful for your time and your mentorship, your friendship. Continued success, my man. I tune in as much as humanly possible when I'm not running around like a maniac here in Tampa. Keep up the great work, my friend, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure, Jay. Can't wait to chop it up again with you soon, and take care and enjoy March Madness as well.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Freddie.